I know you guys won't mind if I join you with a cup of tea. It is that time of the day where we gather from all around the world for your top stories right here in Israel. So welcome to the Israel Brief. I am Rolene Marks, and the Israel Brief is brought to you by these guys, Lay of the Land. More about where you can find their content a little later in the show. But as always, we check out those top stories every Monday to Thursday. I'm going to take a sip of my tea. It's actually very cold and wet here in Israel. We have snow on Mount Hermon in the north. It is unfortunately closed at the moment for skiing and recreation because of the war, but it has brought with it some very, very cold weather. But what warms my heart and warms me is the company of you guys. It is day 417, and a reminder that we still have 101 hostages held captive in Gaza by Hamas now since the 7th of October. Amongst those 101 hostages, we also have the remains of 2 fallen soldiers and 2 Israeli civilians, Avera Mengistu and Hisham al-Sayed, who were taken in 2014. That is 10 years of captivity. We want every single one of them home now. Let's get into the top stories, and all eyes on the possibility of a ceasefire being agreed to at least by the end of the day. Prime Minister Netanyahu will meet with his war cabinet, and he has signaled Israel's acceptance of a ceasefire. Now, EU Parliament leader Joseph Borrell, not a fan of the state of Israel, has implored both parties to accept the ceasefire. It is expected that should this ceasefire be accepted by both sides, it will be announced by President Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron at the end of the day. So let's take a look at what a possible ceasefire would entail. So what we want is a gradual withdrawal of IDF troops from southern Lebanon over the period of 60 days. And earlier today, our Defense Minister Israel Katz said that Israel reserves the right to respond should there be any infraction of that ceasefire, regardless of it being in place, that we will not allow violence committed by Hezbollah on our border towards our northern communities. Also, during these 60 days, Hezbollah would end its armed presence south of the Litani River. And earlier today, the IDF announced that our commando troops had pushed the furthest into Lebanon and had actually reached the Litani River. And we would expect the Lebanese army to come in and to monitor the implementation of the ceasefire. Now, the US wants the United Kingdom to be involved in this process. However, Lebanon doesn't want that. Lebanon is opposed to that. And the issue of who will maintain the monitoring of the ceasefire is still being thrashed out. There were some ideas that perhaps the French could come in, and Israel was opposed to that because of the stance that the French has taken towards the state of Israel in recent months. So the negotiations are focused on limiting Hezbollah's military capabilities. Our Homefront Command has issued new orders to communities in the north because we know our enemy, that before any ceasefire goes into place, that there could be massive barrages of rockets fired towards these communities. As I have said time and again, one of the stated goals of this war is that we want to be able to return our communities who have been evacuated, effectively making them internal refugees since the 8th of October last year. We want to return them safely to their homes. Rabbi Tzvi Kogan, Zichron Livracha, was laid to rest in Kfar Chabad in Jerusalem last night. His body arrived from the UAE yesterday afternoon and was taken to Jerusalem, where it was laid to rest, accompanied by thousands of Chabadniks who were there in person braving the rain, as well as thousands of people from around the world. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, Chabad is one of the most special Jewish organizations in the world. They effectively are a lighthouse for Jews, no matter where you are in the world, and have built up a successful branch in the United Arab Emirates, serving many of the Jewish community who live there, but also building bridges with the Emirati communities. And we have seen some incredible footage, more often than not involving the late Rabbi Kogan, celebrating events, celebrating weddings, really building normalization, tolerance, and incredible love between the two communities. The Emirati Interior Minister announced that they had arrested 3 Uzbeks in suspicion of carrying out the horrific murder of Rabbi Kogan. And yesterday, the chief rabbi of Chabad, Rabbi Duchman, announced that they will be building a Beit Tzvi, a house of Tzvi in the United Arab Emirates. They say that will be a place of splendor, a place of tolerance, a place of Jewish learning. And the brothers Jared and Joshua Kushner have each donated $1 million to Chabad of the United Arab Emirates to build Beit Tzvi. Now, a question has been posed by the Wall Street Journal. They ask, can anyone with integrity at the United Nations survive? Now, what is this in response to? This is in response to a decision taken by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to fire the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide, a wonderful woman called Alice Wairimu Nderitu. She is originally from Kenya. She is an astonishingly brilliant moderator and mediator, and she has refused time and again to class Israel's actions in Gaza as genocide. She published a piece in 2022 that and emphatically has called on the United Nations to remember what actually classed as a genocide. So I will read to you a little bit from her paper. She said, the term genocide encapsulates the Holocaust, the genocide perpetrated by the Houthis on the Tutsis in Rwanda, the Serbian attacks on Bosnian Muslims, and the killings being carried out in Sudan. With regard to Israel, she says, as a legal matter, establishing a pattern of violence as a genocide requires demonstrating intent. Now, we've discussed time and again on this show Israel's humanitarian aid, Israel's specifically warning of civilians to get to the Al-Mawasi, to get to the humanitarian zones, the use of civilians by Hamas as human shields. She says that she says Israel's campaign of self-defense doesn't qualify. She goes on to say that the terms frequent misuse in referring to large-scale grave crimes committed against particular populations, the emotive nature of the term and the political sensitivity surrounding its use and the potential legal implications associated with the determination of genocide, and warns that people must be careful to class this as a genocide. You will notice she hasn't classed the war between Ukraine and Russia as a genocide, because genocide is not about numbers, it is about specific intent. And it stands that she will be fired by the Secretary General, and she serves at the will of the Secretary General. And if you stay tuned, you will hear our audience question of the day, which comes from Ronald in Melbourne, Australia, is very, very pertinent to this particular issue. And finally, I'm going to end on a positive note. I thought the story was beautiful. In fact, it actually moved me to tears. Tens of the children of migrant workers in Israel have written to the IDF Chief of Staff, the Defense Minister, and the Prime Minister's office asking for citizenship. They say the reason they want this is they would like to serve in the IDF. They say that Israel feels like home, and Israel has given them so much that they would like to give back by serving in the IDF. Now, this follows earlier this week the granting of permanent residency to the father of a Filipino IDF soldier who fell in battle in Gaza. He was awarded permanent residency, and this is what these children are seeking so that they can fulfill their dream of serving in the IDF, which makes me think, if the IDF was such a genocidal, terrible army, who would want to serve in it? It actually goes to show that not only does this blow that ridiculous comparison to apartheid South Africa out the window, but it shows you the level of morals and ethics of our army, that even our migrant workers want to serve in it. Now let's get to the audience question from Ronald, and he says, should the UN not be dissolved? Now, that's an interesting question because, as I mentioned earlier, they want to fire the special advisor on the prevention of genocide because she doesn't want to call Israel's actions in Gaza genocide. And we've certainly spoken at length about UN agencies, the Secretary General. But it begs the question, should the UN not be resolved? And my belief is we still need a central body where countries can come together, countries can solve conflict. However, the problem with the UN is that it has been infested with polarized politics. It no longer is an honest broker in so many fields, and that we see this corruption right from, and bias, right from the Secretary General all the way down. Now, we are in the process of seeing an incoming administration in the United States, and we can't forget that during his last term, President Trump withdrew the United States from several agencies and cut funding. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens now with UNRWA, with UNICEF, with the ICJ and various other UN agencies under a new Trump administration, who have already warned about the implications of treating the US's number one ally in the Middle East, the state of Israel, with the grotesque bias that it continues to do. So that's it for today, guys. Don't forget to send me your questions as well as your mensch and your moron of the week. And a reminder that you can check out our content at www.layoftheland.online, our Facebook page at Local Site, our YouTube channel right here at The Israel Brief. We're on X at Lay of the Land 5, on Instagram at Rolene_Marks, and on LinkedIn at Rolene Marks. Guys, God bless you all. Thank you for joining me. Oh, my tea's getting cold. I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you tomorrow.